Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome. So, I'll start things off today by saying a huge thank you to and appreciation to everyone in attendance. And, we are really excited with the lead up to this event. So, I think we'll just jump straight into it. Everyone's waiting long enough. So, we have four names here and who need no introduction. I'm sure you all know, but for those who don't, we'll start with Dan. So, welcome, Dan. Introduce yourself, what you do, and a little bit about your project.
Hey everybody, Dan Reeser. I'm leading our growth team at Acala and Karura. Been at Acala for a little over a year, focusing mostly on marketing and business development stuff. And we are building a parachain on both Polkadot as well as Kusama, focusing on our stablecoins. So it's a kind of decentralized finance network powering the AUSD stablecoin, and that's on both the Polkadot side as well as Kusama. Working with a lot of the teams, including Moonbeam and Interlay and the rest of the ecosystem on kind of growing AUSD issuance and supporting them in that way. That's me.
Brilliant, thank you. We'll move on to our next guest here. Derek, a little bit about yourself and what you do, and a little summary of Moonbeam.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me here. Derek Yu, CEO of PureStake. We're most well known for the project Moonbeam. In fact, as Dan was saying, we also have a Kusama deployment as well, so Moonriver and Moonbeam. And the quick version on Moonbeam is that it's a smart contract platform that's been designed with interoperability in mind. So part of that is an EVM, and part of that is taking advantage of all these interesting kind of interaction possibilities on Polkadot, which we'll be maybe talking about later. Including interactions between ourselves and Interlay.
Perfect, thank you. And last but not least, we have the parachain enthusiast. James, would you like to jump in?
Sure. Hello, everybody. This is James from DFG. So I started investment firm back to 2015 with $20 million to manage at a time. So right now, luckily about being early. So right now we manage more than $1 billion. So we've been very focused on the Polkadot ecosystem investment since 2017. I really love this layer one protocol. Think this can be huge. So we invest into a lot of Dot and Polkadot ecosystem project. So we're continuing supporting the project in the Polkadot ecosystem.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, Alexei.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Alexei. I'm one of the two co-founders of Interlay, and we are lucky to be the host today. So of course, thanks Dan, James, and Derek for joining. We are building a decentralized Bitcoin bridge on a high level. At the core, what I actually designed is the decentralized custody system, which allows us to mint a Bitcoin stablecoin and to use that across all parachains. And I hope today we can explore potential future use cases.
Perfect, thank you very much. So jumping straight into it, we've got something quite interesting to speak about here. Jumping in, so we have Dotsama parachains, exploring the new frontiers in DeFi and interoperability. So essentially, what we want to know, for the moment, DeFi is the preferred choice by those who feel more at ease and understand technology. Can the Dotsama ecosystem, with its parachain system, be a leader in breaking the stigma and becoming more of a mainstream thing? So I think since we're kicking things off with quite a good one, we'll dive straight into this one. Let's start with Alexei, and we'll go around. So Alexei, feel free to take the stage on this one.
All right. Well, I think by building on Polkadot, I think we've all committed ourselves to its success, and I think we all believe in that this is going to work. From my perspective, one of the huge benefits that we've seen is that you can customize your own net chain. You can build whatever you need to, and then still interact with all other parachains, benefiting from the shared security model. And now finally on Kusama and also on Polkadot, we're seeing the first fruits of this, right? We have different parachains which are connected through XCM, and you can suddenly have Bitcoin and other assets moving around the Polkadot ecosystem and really then exploring different use cases without having to worry about high costs, low transaction throughput, and so on. And I think a very nice comparison, at least from my side, when asked about Polkadot is Ethereum is a very handy tool. It's basically like a Swiss Army knife. It allows you to do everything. And the brilliant thing about it, it's easy to onboard users. Now with Polkadot expands this because you can now have an EVM, but also you can customize everything. You can customize all the features to serve your use case, and then also cater to users. If you have big dApps deploying on your chain, you can easily work with them and add additional features with this upgradable governance mechanism that we have. So from my perspective, we're really at the brink of scaling and seeing a lot of adoption, but I'll let the others comment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
I guess first come, first serve.
First come, first serve here. We'll jump in or start picking.
I'll just.
So I guess.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Derek.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to a couple things that I liked about what you said. One is I would agree that DeFi is driving a lot of user activity. I mean, that's just the case. We're seeing that on Moonriver and Moonbeam, and just in general, I think DeFi still is like the main use case that's driving a lot of user interactions. I do agree with you that the Polkadot's ability to have specialized chains is really something that I mean, and Kintsugi is a great example of that. Is something extremely powerful, right? And this is something I think is underappreciated, outside of the Dotsama ecosystem. That being able to have chains that specialize to do one thing and do it well. I mean, it reminds me of that old the Unix philosophy, right? Like in building tools, it's like don't build a tool that does everything. Build like a tool that does like one thing, does it well. But then you combine multiple of these tools together to achieve some like larger effect, and you get this kind of whole is greater than the sum of its parts effect. So I mean, those are things that I believe deeply into, and one of the many reasons I'm also committed to this ecosystem. But I think that your chain is like a very good example of this. That like you take one problem, and it's like as with anything, you dig into it, it's like actually a hard problem, right? There's like a lot of things that go into it, and to do it like really well, requires a lot. And I think that being able to have a whole chain that's kind of specialized as use case means that you're going to be able to do that thing extremely well and at scale and like very securely. And so that's that's the thing I think is special here, is that you can have that thing, which by the way in a standalone environment that would make no sense. So if you specialize into doing this one thing but you were by yourself, well, you would do everything else really badly, and it would just fall apart basically, right? But it's only through these like interactions is it that you can specialize in one thing, but then for the things that you're bad at, you can find other partners or other people to work with. So I mean, that's the thing I'm looking forward to. I think that there's just kind of scratching of the surface happening now with token integrations that are happening across chains. But I see this as the beginning of a whole like large new design space where people can look for different kinds of cross-chain interactions, right? And new programming models, right, for how to combine, let's say, BTC assets like from that are minted like on Kintsugi with like other DeFi protocols elsewhere. And back to the original question was around this like usability. I do think that this specialization will lead to like better user experiences, versus trying to fit everything into like a one size fits all thing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. James, Dan?
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Derek was saying. I think we all get caught up in the buzzwords, like call it DeFi. This is the use case that's been most adopted. But at the end of the day, we're talking about finance. If you look at like traditional economies, you can't have factories, you can't have buildings or real estate markets without money. So what we're doing in crypto, we're setting up a foundation for all the other stuff to be built. Like all the use cases that we imagine in 5 or 10 years that will come, those won't happen without all the groundwork that we're all laying right now in DeFi or setting up a new financial system. So this is one thing that I think Polkadot's really well set up to do, is it's scalable. So we're building a new financial system, but also on scalable technology that can keep up with the demand of billions of people whenever we get to that point. We've seen some of the other networks like Ethereum who really started all of this DeFi movement, but there's just been challenges with scaling that. So as soon as there's demand for things like CryptoKitties, the network crashes. And as soon as there's a lot of demand for DeFi products, the gas fees get really expensive. And one thing that the Polkadot and Substrate team are talking about now is like the potential for even feeless applications or really low fee applications. And that's how you can scale these backend technologies to millions, if not billions of people down the road. So yeah, really fun to be a part of like kind of laying the groundwork for this new financial system on Polkadot.
Brilliant. Thank you
James?
very much. James?
Yeah, thank you. I think I totally agree with what Derek and Dan is saying that, clearly like, for year 2020, it's a year of DeFi and DeFi 1.0 become very successful. But people always talk about DeFi 2.0, but from my understanding, it never happened, right? So there's no real innovations on top of the DeFi 1.0, right? It could be hard because like I already have all the kind of project they are building DAX landings, but what else in the financial system is necessary in the in the DeFi space? It could be hard, right? Even one small sector being improved or the kind of the project coming and building a great project in one specific sector, that would not bring the DeFi 2.0. So what is really the things that can move the needle here to make DeFi to the next level is really about what Derek is saying about the cross-chain, and Polkadot is perfect for this. Just imagine if you use Uniswap on Ethereum and if you use Ethereum on Solana, how could these two things work together? It's not even possible. But Polkadot offer a great platform that you can do cross-chain. I think this is somehow the key for the DeFi moving 1.0 to DeFi 2.0.
Amazing, thank you. Really great points there. So moving on to sort of the next topic here. It's quite a long one, so I'll break this down. What is the importance of Bitcoin in the process of democratization and becoming more open to the mainstream public? And specifically, why is securing trustless BTC liquidity to the parachains vital for the Pokersphere? So to break this down, let's start with Alexi here. Do you see kBTC bringing in liquidity to Kusama and Polkadot chains? And if so, what is the benefit of such liquidity in the short run and long run?
I mean, obviously, like, since we're focusing on bringing BTC over, it's essentially our vision to make this possible. Now, the thing is, as Derek mentioned, just being ourselves in this ecosystem wouldn't do much. And we've seen a few other attempts to, bring DeFi onto Bitcoin, really by engineering complex structures onto the Bitcoin chain and really trying to change how it works and really using this very limited set of functionality and convincing people to go there. Whereas what we believe in is we will focus on the Bitcoin side. We'll bring you trustless Bitcoin that is really decentralized, but then we will rely on strong partners like Moonbeam, Acala, and all the other companies and teams that are building a Polkadot to really then work together with them and find new use cases. And it will start with what we see today with AMMs, borrowing, lending, using BTC as collateral for stable coins. But that's, as James mentioned, that's 1.0. We're just getting started. And I'm really, really excited what we'll see in a year, in 2 years from now, when everything's stable. We've seen these 1.0 use cases, and then we can go ahead and really build complex structure products. We can then really explore, be it as simple as faster payments or easier crowdfunding through BTC, but also more complex use cases like complex option contracts and really allowing people to hedge risk. And the nice thing from our side, of course, it doesn't have to stop with Bitcoin. Right now it's BTC, right now we're really focusing on it. And our vision, and over the next years, the goal is to really bring BTC DeFi to the millions. Instead of it being for the millionaires, we have to go to a big custodian, go to a big exchange, and without having a priority route essentially to this trading and DeFi yield opportunities, as a normal user, the only thing you can do right now is, well, you can use the limited products that you have in on centralized exchanges, but you run risk of essentially being cut out or not even being available to you. And in DeFi, suddenly you get the chance to just use BTC. And the reason why we focus on Bitcoin is that it's not just the largest asset by market cap. It has political value. And we see this over and over again. And the recent geopolitical events just showcase the importance of this feature of Bitcoin being cash everywhere and being available to everyone. And I do firmly believe that with time, we'll see other assets grow into this role. But even Ethereum, which is arguably the second largest asset out there, is still not as well adopted and well known in the world. And I think it's just because Bitcoin started it all. Bitcoin is what people associate with crypto first. And by bringing this to Polkadot and really to this nascent but very quickly growing ecosystem, we can onboard the next tens, hundreds, potentially millions of users into this ecosystem. And that's basically how we see our role. Our role is not just to bring liquidity, our role is to bring users and really take Bitcoin users by the hand and show them, look, I understand that you're cautious about other chains, but we have the most secure proof of stake system that is scalable, well designed, and we have a decentralized way for you to use Bitcoin there. And I hope these points together will help us kind of get to this next stage of crypto adoption. But of course, it's not possible without strong partners. We here fully rely on integrating with PureStake's Moonbeam and Moonriver and Acala and also on Karura, and then everything else that is going to come.
Brilliant, perfect. Thank you very much for that. Leading on here, Derek, we've already seen dozens of DeFi projects are choosing to deploy on Moonbeam smart contracts. And this is essentially an easy way to reach users and assets in the Polkadot ecosystem. What are some of the building blocks of your ecosystem, and where do you see kBTC playing that crucial role?
There's we kind of we're talking about it before, that there's different kinds of DeFi. So this DeFi 1.0 shouldn't be dismissed as like, this is still going to be a significant driver of growth in the short term. And by what I mean by that is that's basically the movement of kBTC from Kintsugi. Let's just say in the context of Moonriver now, or of Kusama. So minting of that asset, moving it like onto either Karura or Moonriver, but I'll just use the example of Moonriver. It'll become XE kBTC in the context of Moonriver, and then having it have this like ERC20 kind of interface like the XE assets do when they're moved to Moonriver, and then being able to just use that in like the DeFi ecosystem that's already there. That's already a big unlock. Right, so there's protocols on there that are looking for high quality assets, can be used as collateral for lending. There's a number of decentralized exchanges, other kinds of protocols, and so I think there's like an immediate use case just around that to just move it over. I would echo though what was said earlier, that this is something that I think kind of the bridge in EVM like is something that like exists like elsewhere. So it's still valuable. It's still going to provide a lot of growth. But the thing that I too am most interested in is looking at powering different kinds of use cases that go beyond this kind of like mint as a token, move the token and put into like local DeFi. And so I think this is something where it's a little hard to imagine, because we're just getting to the point now where that canvas is available and developers will start being able to use it. But we'll make it so that a lot of these functions are remote callable. So you can imagine some almost like a batch scenario. Let's say that you want to batch together multiple operations. You could say, okay, I have this asset. Let's mint a kBTC. Let's perform a movement operation. Let's like deposit it somewhere. I mean, you can kind of string together like multiple operations like across like different chains. And I think this even just as an idea as simple as that will open like new possibilities, right? Because these are services that are not available locally, like in the EVM that we have. These are like other specialized like services from other parachains. And so that's like one of the things we're working on, is just being able to, beyond this like token movement scenario, using XCM to open up the ability to perform kind of remote calls, so that developers can just be armed with these new tools to then invent, to extend like existing protocols or invent new ones based on combining these functions from specialized chains, like minting a BTC in the context of Kintsugi, like into new protocols, new apps.
Brilliant, thank you very much for that. Leading on to Dan here, how would BTC liquidity via kBTC affect the parachains such as Karura and Acala?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what Derek just walked through. And I'll also stick to the Kusama ecosystem because it's the most kind of near term. So we're extremely excited for kBTC to come over to Karura, because I think the three things that Alexei kind of laid out were like liquidity, users, and at some point we talked about decentralization too. we're building a lot of these kind of foundational building blocks to the financial system, like we were just talking about, the Web3 financial system, and BTC being such an important role in that. One example of how it's going to be used on Karura and why decentralization is important, kBTC will be able to be sent over to Karura, and this will be an accepted and actually very kind of well thought of collateral asset for minting AUSD on Karura. So this is a kind of a side note, but AUSD and KUSD are kind of merging into one stablecoin. So you'll be able to mint AUSD on Karura as well as on Acala. So KUSD or kBTC will be the collateral on Karura that you can collateralize your BTC and mint, let's say 50% of that in AUSD. First of all, the fact that the kBTC is decentralized and trustless is really important, because as you can see, we're starting to layer complexity and risk on top of that BTC. So the fact that we know that BTC itself is trustless adds a lot of kind of certainty on the layers that are being added on top of that. But then, like, if you think about where this is happening as we speak, like we're working with the Moonbeam and Moonriver team on integrating the stablecoin with their ecosystem. So what you could do then is you would have kBTC coming over to Karura, minting AUSD, and then maybe you send over that AUSD to Moonwell, and you're providing, or you're lending out your AUSD on Moonwell on the Moonriver blockchain. So this is like a more, I guess, like a more basic cross-chain example, but it's happening like right now. It's really fun to watch. And then as we're going forward, of course, you can build more and more complexity and more kind of natively multi-chain dApps that are kind of sitting on top of these chains and doing all these things more seamlessly. Then it's going to be a little bit manual for users and a little bit more for the advanced type of DeFi users at the beginning. But this is something where, yeah, being able to kind of take advantage of the trustless nature of the BTC that Kintsugi's bringing, the liquidity that it brings to not only our chain, but Moonriver's chain as well. And then the users, like we're limited right now to basically the Kusama and Polkadot users, who a lot of them are new to the DeFi world. And that ecosystem, that user base is growing slowly, but the fact that we can also layer on a whole set of Bitcoin users and give them ways to earn yield with their Bitcoin without even having to sell it, it's going to actually add a lot of value to the whole Dotsama ecosystem with the users that Kintsugi and Interlay are bringing to the ecosystem. So,
brilliant. Thank you very much. Leading on here, so James, DFG essentially established the Polkadot ecosystem fund and supported almost 40 startups to develop the Polkadot ecosystem. From your, and I will say, unique position, how do you see the role of BTC and kBTC for empowering the ecosystem and its future development? And really, where do you see the biggest impact?
Yes, thank you. What I see is just what like Alexi said before, like for me, Bitcoin is not only the biggest asset in the crypto space, but also like serve as a bridge for the crypto space and traditional industry. Because just imagine for the newcomer in the industry, what they will kind of listen to first is Bitcoin. What kind of asset they will buy first is Bitcoin. It's just simply because of Bitcoin have the strongest consensus and have the being early and really about the starting of everything, right? So I think it's more important that what everybody does in the crypto space is about adoption and letting more people move into the space. That's the key to the success eventually. So Bitcoin is actually a best asset to serve as a bridge for crypto people to let more people come into the crypto space. So that's the functionality, or most important functionality of Bitcoin to my understanding. And right now we can see about Bitcoin sitting there at a huge kind of market cap, but very few Bitcoin has been wrapped to different kind of protocol. I checked the data before. It's around like $10 billion of Bitcoin has been wrapped to other layers, layer one protocols, mostly Ethereum. And I think this is still small compared to the kind of the total market cap of Bitcoin. So which means there's still big room to grow for letting more people who holding Bitcoin could be not kind of like crypto people to use all these kind of DeFi product in different layer 1 protocol. So that is actually very important. So more Bitcoin swapped to different protocols that were just simply doing more adoption for the people to the DeFi world and to the crypto industry. And the second, what kBTC is important here is like if we check data, 80% of the kind of web Bitcoin is actually due through WBTC. And it's actually simpler because they are deploying on Ethereum. They are working with all the Ethereum project like Uniswap, Cable Network, Compound, all the top tier Ethereum project, and they use WBTC in these kind of DeFi product, and they are being early, so that's why they are having a lot of users and adoption. But the problem is like they are still using a centralized custody service. They're using BitGo, so which is okay. But from my understanding, if you can do a trusted, it's much better, right? Still, you are using a centralized service. BitGo get hacked before. I'm not saying Bitcoin is bad, but still, if you can do it trusted, it's better. So I think kBTC is able to do it in a trusted way, which is very important to the to the Bitcoin holder. That's even better use cases. The third is really right now there's no project kind of like working as kBTC just to make sure people can the Bitcoin holder can use the DeFi product in their Polkadot ecosystem. So kBTC, and we think the DeFi ecosystem in the Polkadot will be huge in the future. And so what kBTC is able to do is let this kind of Bitcoin holder to use their DeFi in the Polkadot ecosystem, which is also important and huge in the future. So that is from my perspective. kBTC will play a super important role in the future for getting just simply more adoption for the people to and bring these people to their Polkadot ecosystem. So that's the reason, as I said above. Thanks.
Maybe to hop onto that as well. So James, you mentioned BitGo and being the central point of WBTC, and that is absolutely like one of our concerns. Like 20% of WBTC is a MakerDAO. It does account for quite a big part of their collateral. And the risk is obviously not just that the WBTC holder is at risk, but actually protocols. Like if I'm a trader day to day, I want to do like day trading, I want to get quick Bitcoin exposure, then probably doing it centralized is okay. But the moment I lock up my WBTC in a protocol, I draw a DAI, for example, suddenly you have me as a DAI holder now who has a WBTC vault at long-term risk because I do have exposure, but also DAI and all DAI holders suddenly have this risk where if there's a single point of failure, DAI might actually be affected. And the chain is always as strong as the weakest link. And we're building DeFi, but we still have a lot of centralization points around. And it's not just that, obviously, with oracles and other problems, which are much, much more difficult to solve. But I think what we hope to do is basically eradicate one of these single point of failures. However, it's not about removing custodians. We still see custodians and secure custody as a very, very important aspect. But we just think they can do better. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to incentivize big custodians to become vaults and Interlay and essentially accept BTC into custody from big institutional players, because institutions are now moving into this ecosystem. They have BTC, but it's just sitting there and they cannot do anything with it, or at least not really in this new free ecosystem. And what they will be able then to do is they will be able to go, for example, even to BitGo, deposit BTC into BitGo's vault, deposit collateral assets in L1s, into stable coins, and so on, and then mint into BTC or kBTC in this case. And then they could have their exposure on Bitcoin, but then draw, for example, AUSD and use that to earn yield in the Polkadot ecosystem and take basically the opportunities that you now, for example, see on Moonbeam and Moonriver and all these new protocols that allow you to earn very high yield or experiment with new things that you cannot do on centralized exchanges. And while regulations, of course, are a challenge, we think that by allowing institutions to really embracing them to integrate with Interlay and really run those vaults and also allow their clients to get exposure, maybe within a limited set of products, but still, I think this will help us even further drive adoption. At least that's our hope. And hopefully then allow them to also get exposure to Acala and Moonbeam and potentially find more synergies there.
Brilliant, perfect. Thank you very much. Moving on here, so on to the next topic, and quite an interesting one at that. So how important do you see the role of the communities in the expansion and inclusion of users holding substantial BTC assets, but not yet using Dotsama products yet? So once again, I think we'll start with Alexi for this one, and then we'll go around. So if you'd like to jump in here and take the stage.
I mean, I think we've discussed to some extent, right? So we all hope that we can bring more Bitcoin users. What I think is perhaps kind of to move this into a bit of a different direction, what we discussed so far, is the challenge of the complexity, I think. And I just saw a question, and I think a lot of people are asking questions, what about the complexity of Polkadot? And how do we, like, how soon perhaps do we see us moving away, like really having a one-click integration? And in this, perhaps I'll hand over to Dan and then to Derek, because I think they're way ahead of us in this regard and in terms of usability.
Yeah, I mean, ideally we can get to the point where, I'll admit I've used BlockFi for like BTC yield. It's very easy. I just hold my BTC there and I earn X% of return. That is really what the masses want. Like, it needs to be that easy where you just put your Bitcoin somewhere and it starts earning magically. So yeah, there's a lot of work, I think, in the Polkadot ecosystem from tooling. So thank God we have teams like Talisman and Subwallet popping up now that are improving the wallet experience for end users. Polkadot.js has been great for all the developers, but now it's time to really start making this a little bit more manageable for the general population. With that being said, yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be slow progress, but when we can get to the point where somebody can send their BTC to some place, maybe it's the Interlay website or app, and they put their BTC somewhere and it's earning. But in the background, what may be happening is you could be pulling yield from Moonbeam, DEXs or money markets, Acala DEXs and money markets, but with just abstracting that away from the user. Everyone on the call today is probably an early adopter, so they're going to get to go through the experience with us before we get to the point where all of it's like fully kind of end user, I guess, an experience developed for the mass audience. But we're going to get there slowly but surely. Yeah, part of being in the multi-chain kind of ecosystem adds complexity to that, which is why like the Polkadot.js wallet was actually an engineering feat. Being able to do that, to make a wallet that can interact with that many chains in one kind of place, is a very tough job. And then props to Talisman and Subwallet for taking on the task of making that also user-friendly across all these chains. So it's going to be fun to watch just all the progress on the UX side of things over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with many of those points. I'll just go back to a couple things. I mean, this whole the discussion about decentralization, trust assumptions. There's like this tempting path of just, okay, well, we're a centralized entity. We just put that trust assumption in, all of a sudden we can have this like great user experience and these other things. But I would argue the other side of the coin there, that sometimes the easy thing is tempting, but it's the hard thing that gets you the prize. Like, and really the centralized solutions, it's really it's like a black box, right? Like, you can't like use it then as like a building block for like other things. And I still see us as like, there's like some very large structure is going to be built, and we have the Legos, and we're like just at the the bottom layers here. So like, we need to kind of leave people's like imagination to build other things on top. Like, that's like a very important part of the story here. And that's where these properties of minimized trust assumptions and decentralization are so important, because that's what gives like the whole structure kind of makes it solid, and like it makes it like a solid foundation to build upon. I mean, to the question of the communities and expansion, I do think that there is a great opportunity here. I think these decentralization properties are probably something that might be more palatable to like BTC holders. And I'm sure there's some Dotsama ecosystem folks that have BTC in their portfolio where they'll now have an opportunity to unlock it and deploy it, make it productive, and that's a win in and of itself. But the real opportunity here is on using this asset to reach a broader audience. And so even though you say 10 billion, I mean, yeah, that's not a lot of the value of the Bitcoin as a whole, but it's still it's not nothing. Those are like real numbers here, basically. So if you can get like another $10 billion of the available Bitcoin like into the ecosystem, that's like a huge win. And so I do think that some of these folks, I mean, obviously there's a spectrum of folks that are Bitcoin holders, some of whom are like you only have it etched on like metal cards and buried under your mattress or whatever it is. But I think there are some people that that will find this solution appealing, given its focus on these minimized trust assumptions and other things. But yeah, UX. I mean, I do have some ideas of this. I mean, this is definitely something where coming from, I spent most of my career building Web 2 products, and this is something that you do kind of notice right away when you start building in Web 3 that there are these additional constraints that make for usability challenges. I think I've also seen that basically the kind of investments that like a Web 2 company make into like UX are like generally like there's not as much investment going into them on the Web 3 side. So that is, I mean, these are all correct things. My belief is, I do think that if you look at the discussion we had before about specialized chains on Polkadot, I think that there's an opportunity to make like a chain that's specialized just on being like the front face to the user, right? A chain that's like specialized, maybe has very fast block times and has, is optimized basically for giving the user feedback, even on something that might take like multiple blocks to happen. That could be an aggregation chain of some kind, right? That could aggregate activity like from multiple like other chains. And so I'm sure that like we haven't seen, we're going to see like more innovations like in this area as the ecosystem evolves.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Leading on here, sort of like alpha leaks. So could you guys give us some leads on some new and exciting integrations that need BTC liquidity and how the community can participate in bootstrapping these projects? And I think we'll start with James here. And where do you see the next big innovations linking to usability? And is there anything specifically that they want?
Yeah, I think for what Bitcoin holders looking at, they are still like either big holders, they are still miners or institutional investor, right? They are basically looking for two things. I would say the first is really I need some APY, right? Like 4-5% a year. Because something is better than nothing. So then they will choose some. Right now, they will choose some, the platform like BlockFi, what Dan mentioned before, and the Ember Group, MatrixPort, this kind of centralized platform. The other is really about, make it easy for me to use, because I don't have much knowledge. How can you make it easy for me to use? So these two are really the key here. I guess from the APY perspective, all the DeFi product is definitely higher than the kind of the centralized product today. Because basically what they are doing is that they take the Bitcoin from their customer and these kind of holders, then they lend it to the people to do quant trading, which is not a high APY in such a not a crazy bull market. So I guess from that perspective, DeFi is definitely better than these kind of quant trading. And the other is really about right now, I think from my understanding, it's really hard to use this kind of product these days. So things has to be improved and will be improved gradually in the future. Then make sure these kind of Bitcoin holder can understand that and easily use these products. I guess it just takes time. For example, in the we mentioned about Polkadot.js. It's for me, I can use it, but for the people who just come into the space, maybe it's a little bit harder for them to use the Polkadot.js. But that's also a problem which is same face before. MetaMask come from consensus, but really before what Ethereum Foundation support is MyEther wallet. Nobody using MyEther wallet right now, and their experience is awful. We just need to have more strong team right now, like Tilesma and others, building the wallet in the Polkadot ecosystem have better UI and UX and easy for the people to use. That will kind of improve things and have a lot of adoption for new users to use the the Polkadot ecosystem product. I think that is really important, and will probably solve the second point. So I think the first is easy to solve. The second is also hard, but will still be solved gradually. So that's my understanding.
Brilliant, thank you. Dan, if you'd like to jump in here.
Yeah. As far as alpha, I don't know if I have anything too juicy. We're just we have a lot going on as far as just standing up all of our products. So with all the things about to launch in Acala's EVM environment, probably similar to Derek, like there's going to be a lot of use cases for people to lend, borrow, use their Bitcoin to earn yield. So that's one thing that we're excited for, is to have this as an option to offer to teams building on our chain. So when you're talking to teams that are also deciding between like which layer 1 or which parachain to build on, like this is something that not every layer 1 can even offer to teams building on their chain. So being able to offer kBTC or Interlay BTC on the Polkadot side is an advantage for the Polkadot ecosystem in general. And then as far as like bringing the community, the BTC community into this, I think we need to make a joint effort across the Interlay team, the Moonbeam team, and us to like think through how do we go about this in a strategic and kind of tactical way to bring the Bitcoin community to Polkadot, to educate them on what's even possible. I remember back when BitGo did the launch of Wrapped BTC, whenever that was, and it was a huge splash. I remember all the teams that were involved and all the kind of backers of that initiative on the Ethereum side. So probably something like that is what we need to work towards on the Polkadot side, to really like get the word out and educate people on what's possible in Polkadot DeFi with Bitcoin. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And Derek, if you'd like to jump in here as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in just a little bit. I would just largely echo what Dan was saying, is that sometimes I almost get ahead of myself and start thinking about these advanced scenarios, but there is the kind of the here and now, walk before you run kind of things. There's plenty of opportunities on both Karura, like Moon River. There's a lot of protocols out there. There's a lot of like opportunities for being able to take advantage of BTC like as an asset, either as an LP, as like a as collateral into like a money market, or like a lending and borrowing protocol. So I think we need to just like do that first. Let's do like the kind of the basic things first. And every time that happens, every time there's a minting and then like an LP deposit, I've heard Betty speak about this very eloquently, right? Every time you deposit like kBTC as collateral into lending and borrowing protocol, you like are minting out like AUSD or some other borrowing some other asset and then deploying that somewhere else. That's like growth. That's what growth looks like, right? You're kind of growing the value of the ecosystem. You're growing the interconnectedness. And so I think that's that's kind of like what's in store in the short term. Is we just need to build like that that connectivity, like those connections, those relationships, those deposits, and that's going to help the whole ecosystem really.
Perfect, thank you.
To jump right on that one, I think one thing that's important to point out is that Kusama and Polkadot see organic growth. And if we take a closer look at some of other networks out there, it's not all organic. You have a lot of institutional money moving in and basically moving around. But the risk here is it's not sticky. That liquidity, these users are not sticky. They go for the highest returns. They get paid to market make, which is fine. Of course, it helps. And I think we're going to see more and more partners really to enabling users to trade by bringing liquidity. But I think what we see in Kusama and Polkadot is what Derek said. It's like step by step, user by user, it's growing. But if one user is happy, he'll tell his friends and they'll tell their friends. And then in the end, you build a strong community with quality over quantity. And I think that's what's going to stand the test of time, and not let's quickly, pay as much as we can to get all these big firms to hop on and just provide liquidity. No, I think, for example, what Acala is doing with the AUSD fund is really funding these long-term integrations, funding the teams that will build and then bring more users and bring their communities onto our chains. And I think it's like Rome was not built on one day. I think this very well applies to Polkadot. But Rome still stands, maybe in a different form, maybe not as an empire, but as a very important heritage city that changed a lot of the course of history. And I do think that Polkadot has the potential to become exactly this. And of course, we hope that it continues existing in its glory for all time. But right now, I think we're just at the very start. And as for Alpha Leaks, I don't have much, except that we basically just launched kBTC after 2.5 years of development. And yeah, I think I'll end it here. And I think now it's time for user questions.
Brilliant.
Congrats on that, by the way. I didn't even congratulate you guys on on that huge milestone. So I know how it feels to be working on something for that long, and then finally like to ship something working is like you deserve a lot of credit for that. So
thanks a lot. Following in the big footsteps of your both teams. So we have a lot of catching up to do there as well.
Brilliant, thank you all. So now we'll move on to sort of the Q&A section. Now, we've got quite a few questions here, so we're going to pick about 4 or 5 and we'll go through these. So we have one question here from Chadi Al-Adani, and we have, on which blockchain other than the Polkadot should we expect to see InterBTC available next? And I think, Alexei, that'll probably be the first one for you to jump in on here.
So I think we should stop looking at it's Polkadot versus other chains. What we see right now, we all have our own chains, right? They're all L1s, and we're all talking to each other. And the goal is essentially, well, we basically build a strong community, and then we get other L1s to connect to us. And you have Ethereum, you have Cosmos, you have Solana, which have their own problems, and they're all things to figure out. And it will be an interesting thing to see is what happens when we connect to them. My feeling is that we'll import a lot of liquidity because of the high opportunities that we have in the ecosystem. Of course, there is demand on other chains for kBTC and InterBTC, and we're exploring to see what we're going to do with that. Obviously, Cosmos is one of the things that has been connecting. To Polkadot. There's a few teams that have been already exploring to basically allow the Cosmos chains to just talk to Polkadot chains and kind of bridge over the, I guess, initial competition and really just say, well, why can't we have Terra on and integrate with Acala and Moonriver? And the same thing goes for us is basically, well, we can bring more liquidity from Terra over into our ecosystem. But on the other hand, we can also bring Bitcoin, the one that they're announcing to buy and really are struggling right now. And if you follow the discussion to find a way to do this in a trustless manner, well, I mean, we can do that. And by bringing more liquidity, this means that the system grows. You have more people involved and communities merge. And I think that's essentially the ultimate goal, because the people should focus on the product, not just on the cult of which L1 is my favorite. I think once we get to that point, then we've reached mainstream adoption.
Brilliant, thank you very much. We got a question here from Max. So Polkadot at this moment has become less popular for users because of the complexity of interaction. If you did have the opportunity now to change the blockchain without changing anything in your project and continue developing on a new blockchain, would you do it? If so, what kind of blockchain would it be? If not, could you explain? This will be an open question, so if anyone wants to jump in and answer this one. Any volunteers?
I'll jump in. I mean, it's a bit of an edgy question, so I like it. I think some of the, I mean, we already discussed some of the challenges, right? So some of the challenges are around, UX, like wallets and other things. I think that, we with Moonriver and Moonbeam have sidestepped some of those challenges, like in our approach, because of this kind of Ethereum compatible, this Ethereum implementation we've done has allowed for the use of, Ethereum wallets in particular. A lot of the apps that we have are using Ethereum wallets. So I think that's, one of the maneuvers that we've done to try to, help with this issue. That being said, it's not perfect there though either. So I would say that a lot of the, Ethereum has in it this mindset of I'm Ethereum and that's it kind of thing, right? So then you have this you connect like one, if you take MetaMask, right? You connect like one chain And then if you have to switch to another chain, you kind of go and you switch to another chain. That doesn't work that well, like for what I think the future is going to look like, for what Dotsama is, right? You kind of need to have this awareness of like multiple chains at once, because you might be doing an act. We just described these actions before that might span like 3 chains, right, in one set of actions. So yeah, I think that it's helped us, but it's probably not. It might not be the final answer, because there are things that like are less of a good fit. But to the second part of the question of like, would like I switch or do something else? Like, absolutely not. I think that Substrate is like extremely like powerful. I think the idea of like Polkadot is extremely powerful. It's like quite misunderstood, I'd say. Like in the broader, you kind of go out and into the broader kind of crypto ecosystem. There's a lot of like, I guess, either misunderstandings or people that like I think don't appreciate the potential. But for me, given a lot of the vision we talked about, right? This vision that there's going to be many specialized chains, that they need a way to talk to each other. You need an ability to make these things. I absolutely see the Dotsama ecosystem is playing a very important role in that moving forward. Now, I'm not a max either, so it's not that it's only going to be that. So there's going to be kind of have this view that you're going to see consolidation into like a few different areas. So you'll see consolidation into like there'll be kind of Substrate and Polkadot based chains. That'll be one concentration of activity. I think Cosmos and its IBC system, and the Cosmos SDK, that's also unlikely to go anywhere anytime soon. There's a lot of traction and interesting things happening there. And then you have like all these EVM chains. A lot of them have a lot of users and traction on them. So I think this like EVM technology stack is here to stay too. So you kind of have many chains, but maybe fewer technology stacks that developers are using to develop. That's kind of the future I see. But I see that the big advantage of Polkadot, I've described it earlier today, actually, on another call. It's almost like, there's going to be a network connecting these things. But, on Polkadot, it's almost like you have a LAN. It's like, you have a LAN with an ability to make these like specialized computers to do like interesting things. So I see that as something that is quite unique, actually.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We have a question here from Mr. 10x. So, hello everyone. I've asked Derek Yu this question some time ago on the Moon River Discord, and I'd like to ask the rest of you on what are your opinions regarding bridging into layer 2 protocols such as Starknet or ZK Sync. I see a lot of movement in that space. Will XCM and kBTC and the rest find its way into this area? There are some projects with very high TVL in layer 2 already, and I'd like to see the Kusama and Polkadot parachains interact with these layer 2s. So, open floor here. If anyone would like to jump in, I'd say it'd be good to get your opinion on this as well, Derek. I think he's called you here, asked you here previously.
I mean, I don't want to keep going. I'll kick it off quickly and then pass it off to some of my my colleagues here. That I mean, L2s are certainly interesting. They're like new ecosystems. They're they're just forming now. I do want to like go back to like a comment that was made earlier, though, that I think when people overfixate on TVL, I've also been studying this quite a bit now that we're launched, and I would 100% agree that a lot of what you see out there is like inorganic, right? And so it's like sometimes pretty difficult to understand like what's real and what's not real. So I would say that for some of these new ecosystems that have like these like large amounts of TVL growth, like almost a little bit your spidey sense should be going off, that like it's like who's kind of behind the curtain, like what like powerful forces are at play, and like you're only seeing part of the picture here. Like there's like a lot of other things happening like behind the scenes. Now, but back to my comments before about EVMs. I mean, I do think EVM tech stack's here to stay. That means Ethereum itself. That means some number of the L2s on Ethereum. These are all going to be ecosystems that live and carry forward. And so figuring out how to interop with them, I think is, we have this, we kind of are spoiled in a way. We have this like rich interoperability built into the actual tech stack that we're using into Substrate itself. But, it's still a broad world out there. So we need like, to have almost like WAN connectivity. We need to be able to, talk to these other like ecosystems, value exchange and other kinds of things. And, we're working with a lot of development teams that are figuring out like multi-chain deployments where they may have part of their plan is to be in Polkadot, part of their plan is to be in some of these other ecosystems. So that's kind of the way I see things going, is it's only going to become more like that, where people have apps that are in multiple places at once. They need to have a messaging system that can connect those different like outposts like together. That's kind of the what's happening. There's these new like overlay networks now that are even attempting to make like for generic message passing systems to pass messages between different like across different consensus systems.
Yeah,
Brilliant. Thank you.
That's one thing I'll add is just I think a lot of these parachain teams or layer ones, like you're not, as far as like who you're bridging to, I think what's happening is that you're not really picking out individual chains that you want to bridge to. It's becoming more like which bridge do you want to join, and is that bridge connected to X chain or Y chain? So with Acala on the Cosmos side and Wormhole and all these other ones, there's beginning to be a group of 6 teams, 8 teams, 10 teams. So if they want to add Starkware or whatever other layer 2s that they were added, that's kind of up to that community or that group of nodes or operators who are running that bridge. But that's kind of the easiest route, it's looking like, to get to these other networks, is to go through these bridges that over time will hopefully becoming more and more fully decentralized and less reliant on kind of bridging and multi-sigs and things like that. So that's just one thing I wanted to add on the L2 question.
Brilliant. Perfect. Thank you very much. I think due to time, we're coming up to the last minute here. So I think we'll probably wrap this up for now. I do want to say a huge thank you to our guest speakers here today. So I really, really appreciate all of you guys coming and turning up for this today. And it's a really, really nice turnout by the community here. And the whole, we got quite a few questions, and unfortunately we couldn't go through them all today. But we just a quick reminder that we are offering a competition. The best question will win a ticket into Bitcoin Miami 2022. So thank you all for your questions. They have been noted, and we'll see you guys for the next one for sure.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Cheers to you guys on kBTC. So.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for joining.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everyone.